Hi, welcome to part 2 of our treehouse drawing project using two-point perspective. So in this video we're going to add a tree and make these random floating boxes look like a treehouse. So I have pulled up some reference photos of trees to look at. So it's really important to actually look at some references for the thing that you're trying to draw whenever you're drawing something that you want to make look at least semi-realistic. So when people are drawing trees, they often think, I know what a tree looks like, but not always they don't necessarily get it right. Or I would say some of the common problems are making trees look too simplistic or just look flat rather than three-dimensional. Oh, there we go, we've got our blown up version of that. Okay, so as you can see, I've pulled up a bunch of different references. That's because not all reference photos are equal. Notice if you want to pull up some of your own reference photos for this, in my search terms I added no leaves. So this was a search for tree with no leaves, so that the leaves wouldn't get in the way and you could actually see the branches of the tree. I also pulled up some images of tree houses. Because I realized that I didn't really know that much about how tree houses really function in terms of how is the weight supported. So I was looking at some actual tree houses to see, okay, the limbs or the branches go right through the floor of the house or the platform. Or in this case, there's a platform underneath that spans a couple of different branches. So doing research like this is really important to just being able to create a drawing that looks plausible. So you don't always have to use exactly one single reference. You can do something with an amalgamation of different references. Depending on your skill level, it's a little bit harder when you do that. Okay, so we will refer back to those as needed, but for now, we'll be looking at this. All right, so as I am working, I might have those references pulled up on my screen. In fact, I would, and I would have those pulled up so that I was looking at them as I draw. But for the purposes of this video, you won't see that on the screen. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is add a trunk to the tree. So we want to make our trunk a cylinder. That's the big thing to remember whenever you are drawing a tree, is that what you're dealing with are cylinders. So I'm thinking about this and thinking, what could I do to make this a little bit more interesting than just one tree trunk just going straight up. So I'm thinking, what if I make this something with some angles to it? And I can also have my cylinders go from a little bit thinner or thicker at the bottom and get a little bit thinner at the top. So when you're starting a cylinder, you usually kind of start it with basically a rectangle. And in this case, it'll be instead one that's like a rectangle, but it's getting thinner. Once we close these off, we'll have a rounded form closing these off. For now, we just will know that that's coming. If I want to switch directions here and I do because I want to put something in here that is going to then support this or go through this, I want to make an angle as I'm closing that off. Although actually it might make more sense to start this next branch down here. So one thing that you'll notice as I'm drawing is that I'm drawing lightly and I'm drawing right through these forms that I've created. So I'm basically kind of treating these structures as if they're see-through. And that's going to, eventually you're going to erase the parts that are going behind the opaque forms, but if we're just drawing right through, it'll give a more realistic impression that that form continues even where you can't see it. So down here, I want to make this, again, look like it's 3D. So I'm adding this with an ellipse where it attaches to the surface of this tree trunk. And then from there, I can have this go up through this structure. And then let's say instead of just going straight like this, let's say I want it to then branch out here or turn here. So then I can do this by attaching that next cylinder there. So I can kind of put that in as just like an angle, but then eventually I would have a curve there to show that. Now all of this may be hidden inside there anyway. And when I have this going off here at an angle, a common kind of structure for trees is a branching structure like this. So I'm thinking, well, what if I have that branching structure to my tree? So what if I create another main trunk of this tree here, let's say. Coming out like so. So I can start to put that in. And then up here, let's say I just want this to just keep going up. I don't necessarily like how that's so close but not touching, so I could adjust things there, maybe make this get a little narrower. Or have it go more straight up rather than angling to the side, or both. All right, I've got this little structure here that I want to be a birdhouse. So I'm going to kind of turn this into something that looks like a birdhouse, and then I'm going to figure out where it's going to be hanging from. I think I'm going to need a branch up here to hang that from. I want to have this be a birdhouse with a peaked roof, so I'm going to add kind of a triangular structure here at the top. Now to make that look realistic, first thing I'm going to think about is that this part of this plane is closer to me. This side is closer than this side. So a line that goes halfway through, and the reason I want this to go halfway through is because if I'm thinking of the peak of this roof, if it were just right in front of us, it would be, if it were turned toward us, I want a structure like this. So this would be right in the middle. But this will not look quite that symmetrical when it's seen in perspective. So this half, that's closer to us will appear a little bit bigger than the half that's farther away. So I'm just going to eyeball that and say, okay, this side's going to be bigger. And then I can draw that line straight up, just like I did here. And then however high I want that peak to be, I'll just stop and I'll connect from that top down to here. And I'll connect from this to here. Now you may be wondering, why are these diagonal lines not intersecting these points? And the reason for that is because these are ones that are just, they're not standing in for a straight box. These are standing in for a triangle. So these don't have to go back to those vanishing points because they're really just kind of going upward instead. All right, so now we would have kind of the same thing going on here. So something like that. And we can just kind of connect that like so. Now this angle would go back to our vanishing points. So you can test and make sure that you got that right. So it looked like I eyeballed that okay, but instead of eyeballing it, you can go from this point back over to here to my vanishing point and make sure that that's correct. And then I can adjust this other side of my triangle accordingly. Okay, and this part would all be kind of see-through anyway, so I'm just going to erase those a little bit. I'm not going to erase them completely in case, you know, maybe I want a see-through birdhouse later. So I'll keep those lines just in case I need them later. Okay, then I can say, all right, if we were to attach a rope to this, to hang it, again, this part is the closest part to us. So if we make this halfway point just a little bit farther back than what would be halfway visually, and then connect that up here. So this is just a little farther back than halfway, so it'll appear to kind of balance. And then that would just hang going straight up and down, so we can make sure that our vertical is truly vertical by lining it up. Okay, and then we can end this wherever we want to end this once we have a tree branch. All right, so now I can add a tree branch over here. All right, so adding a tree branch, again, we want to have some kind of ellipse here, and we can have this kind of angle up and out, and then we'll have this, so this would be technically a form, so we can kind of double this up. It's going to be really narrow, but then part of that would go over the tree branch, and it's going to curve, and then it's going to go up above. So notice I didn't just stop it right at where that line is, but I'm having it curve up and over. So if we were to see the other side, it would keep going like that in a curve. And then it would come back down, and you'd have some kind of knot or something where it's then attaching to this. So I'll make this, you can see that this is kind of doubled here. And this will be in front of this because you can see that this just looks like it's further in the foreground because of the placement. All right, so we have this almost looking like a real tree here. We can then, if we want, just add some additional branches just to make this look more realistic. Maybe have some branches in here that kind of go off at different directions. So always kind of thinking about this. Now this is going to be behind, but kind of remembering, oh, that's right, it does need to be 3D with kind of a curve, even though we won't see it. Just want to remind you of that so that you can get in that habit. And then maybe it'll branch up and change direction again. Then let's say it goes off the page. So if you want to, you can use your ruler to do this kind of thing, to make sure that you get that kind of lined up nicely and just connecting. And again, these are not necessarily going out to the vanishing points because they're not sort of lined up at the same angles as these things. All right, let's see. I'm going to keep going with this, and I had the thought, you know, maybe it would be nice if I put another part of the tree house down here a little bit closer. It's just looking at some of these other tree houses that had multiple levels and thinking, oh, what if I gave this kind of a platform, maybe not quite this complicated, but what if I did something on mine like that? So first I want to make sure that I have this trunk of the tree. Looking more set. And if I want these to look a little bit more like they're both main trunks, here, maybe I can adjust this a little bit more, so I'll have kind of one main trunk going up just sort of straight, and then here is where I can have these maybe going off at different angles. So doing something like that then will make this look like this is sort of the main branch of the tree. All right, and then I could build another platform onto here. So let's say I want this platform to have the angle be, let's see, where can we put that? We'll try putting it right here, let's say. Let's see what happens with that. All right, I want to make sure that my vertical is really vertical. So I'm going to add this on the same way that I did some of the other boxes. So this is going to be another box that's just going to be really skinny. All right, so then I'm lining up the top of this little platform up to my vanishing point. And I'll do the same thing to that bottom part of my vertical line as well. Keep going like so. Okay, and let's say I want it to end right, let's see, how big can I make that? Let's see if I end it, we'll end it right there. Let's say going past the trunk of the tree. It's going to kind of go like it's going between these two branches with this in the middle is my idea for this. So let's see if we can make that work. And then I'll have over here, this line then also needs to connect to our other vanishing point. So at the top and then at the bottom. And then let's say we'll end it over here, so close to the edge, but not so close that it'll get cut off. And let's see how that works, if that will look like it makes sense. So then I'm going to connect this, making sure first that this is truly vertical, makes a 90-degree angle with our horizontal lines, then we will connect it to our vanishing points. Okay, that connects. And then we'll do the same thing down. Well, we don't need to see the bottom part of this, so I won't bother to do the bottom part of that line right now. But I'll do this one over to here. Okay. All right, so I think that works pretty well. And here I'm going to not see the tree branch underneath the platform. So since this platform won't be see-through, and then I'll see it coming up through the tree here. So I wanted to reference that, so I looked up in advance when I was practicing for this to see, okay, what does that look like? It's going to make this sort of like curve there. But to see exactly where that curve will fall and what that will look like still needs to follow the rules of perspective. So I'm going to say, okay, if this is where that comes through, then I'm going to connect this up to here, and it'll be along that line that we'll see the branch come through. So then I'm just going to make it more of a curve because that branch is curving there. All right, so to kind of make this a little bit clearer, I'm going to start to erase some of the lines we don't want. All right, so I'm going to erase the part of the tree that would go through this platform. All right, so this part of that tree branch we will actually see. And I am going to leave these connecting lines here. If you get rid of these completely, that's what makes a tree drawing look really flat. So we want to leave this. If it looks a little bit weird and fake to you right now, don't worry, we can use shadowing, we can use texture to make this look more realistic, but it's all going to follow that join line. I can think of that as a cross contour line. All right, getting rid of a little bit of where we would see that other tree branch through this tree branch. This tree branch is in front, so then we can get rid of the back part of the platform. I've decided that that's a tree branch, so it is going to be, it's going to be not see-through. I can make this then kind of angle a little bit. Notice that where I have the direction of the tree branches change, I'm using angles rather than curves. You can have some curves in tree branches because it is an organic form, but I think that people tend to overuse that. And when you really look at different trees, you'll see that they are actually more angular than you may realize. So yes, there's a little bit of curving, but more often than not, things are kind of connecting more at angles. All right, so I'm having that angle up there, getting rid of what's behind the tree branch, continuing that process. All right, and I'm going to go through here and darken some of these lines. You do not need to go through and darken your lines like this on your drawing unless they're really too light and it's confusing you. I'm really doing this part for the video. I know that sometimes people really like to really darken their edge lines up once they have decided, okay, this is really where I want this thing to be. I caution you to avoid doing that, or if you do so, to just darken them up the tiniest bit. If you darken them too much, it will give you those really hard outlines that will make your drawing actually appear less realistic, or I call it killing the line sometimes. Okay, that said though, just so that you can see for the video the things that you need to see, I'm going over some of these lines that are actually the ones that you'll see. So disappearing behind the tree branch, this back edge of the platform also disappears behind the tree branch. So one of the things that people sometimes struggle with drawing is just kind of keeping track of what's in front, what's in back. So just keep thinking through it. Don't go on autopilot. That's why you always want to do this kind of work while things are in pencil. Okay, and I am still leaving, again, this cross contour curve. Doesn't have to be super dark, but we're going to want to know that it's there and have that really appear in the drawing. Okay, now this is also going to disappear behind that platform, and then keep going. And then in here, it's going to disappear behind this, assuming all of this is going to be see-through, is going to be opaque. Right here again, you would have this curve appear, and the reason this is going up instead of down is because now that we're above this eye level, if this weren't all connected, you would see the underneath of a curve. So we can have that angle that way. All right, we're definitely going to see this tree branch coming in front, and then it goes behind. Now at this point, although I am erasing some of these things, you may not want to actually erase them completely. So I'm just lightening them up, making it a little bit clearer. But you may not want to get rid of them completely, because we may want to have some of these boxes be, maybe have windows or have kind of slats in them or different kinds of openings. So this part will come in front. This part of the tree. We know the branches, though, are not going to have openings. At least, you know, maybe they'll have a woodpecker hole, but not one that goes all the way through. We can get rid of that part of the line. We drew that before we knew where this was going to end. Okay, and this does come in front of this part of this larger part of the treehouse. Okay, this part, again, this is going to be a part that will be seen until whatever point it goes through the bottom of this. So let's just pick a point and say, okay, let's say it goes through here. And then we'll have that point connect over here. And then along that line, that's where, let's see, actually, I think that would curve up since we're above. Then something like that. So just making a curve along that angle. So even those curves will kind of follow the perspective angles. Then in here, this would be behind, and then up here, it's coming through the top. All right, this video is getting pretty long, so we'll take a pause here. As you can see, though, this doesn't have a lot of detail yet. We will have another video coming up where we can add some of these details. So this kind of thing where maybe you have slats in the treehouse or you have a window. That's why I've sort of left these boxes see-through. Plus the fact that you don't necessarily have to make yours a really traditional looking, you don't have to make yours a traditional looking treehouse. So maybe you want to make yours kind of funky in some way like this, or like this one over here where it's not necessarily a treehouse, but we've got some sort of abstract floating boxes of some kind. So whatever it is that you want to do with yours, or maybe you even have yours boxes with Zentangles on the side, who knows. All right, I will see you in the next video with some more details for your treehouse or whatever it is.